Host. Today is the third day of your postpartum recovery. Are you sure you want to leave this world with the baby in 7 days? The cold, robotic voice of the system echoed in her mind. Valentina Li, eyes red from crying, looked at the baby she had just coaxed to sleep and nodded without hesitation. Confirmed. Leaving. 8 years of entanglement, she was finally ready to let go. Just moments ago, Valentina had broken down while trying to soothe her fussy newborn at the postpartum care center. Meanwhile, Oliver was upstairs throwing a birthday party for his first love's 3-year-old son. He held Zoe's child, another man's son, with practiced ease, coaxing him to call him dad, and even promised him half his fortune. That phrase, half the inheritance, was the final straw for Valentina. Everyone in L City knew Valentina Li was the woman Oliver hated most. But few knew that Oliver and Valentina had once been madly in love for 4 whole years. 8 years ago, she had died in a car crash. As an orphan, the system offered her a deal, complete a mission to win over Oliver Sue, and she could return to her original world. At that time, Oliver was L City's untouchable iceberg, cold and elite. Socialites threw themselves at him, but he never looked twice. When Valentina first approached him, he mocked her mercilessly. A woman like you? Never in this lifetime. But she didn't give up. He called her an airhead, so she studied hard for an MBA to match his intellect. He said he felt nothing for her, so she honed every skill in the art of seduction, style, grace, wit. Gradually, he stopped pushing her away and began to let her accompany him to events. 3 years later, it was Oliver who confessed. 6 months after that, he proposed, shocking all of L City. That night, the system announced her mission was complete and asked if she wanted to return. But for the first time, Valentina had felt truly loved, addicted to Oliver's tenderness. She chose to stay. For the next 4 years of marriage, Oliver treated her like a queen. To make her smile, he spent tens of millions on a week-long drone light show spelling out Valentina, I love you. When his parents looked down on her, he stood firm. Mom, Dad, Valentina is the only woman I'll ever love. She's the only daughter-in-law you'll get. But their happiness ended after just 4 years. On her birthday trip west, Oliver was cursed. When he awoke, he had forgotten their love, and worse, replaced her in his memories with his first love, Zoe. Valentina tried everything, but nothing worked. Desperate, she made a deal with the system, trade 50 years of her life for the curse's cure. But to lift it, Oliver had to say one thing, I love you. She begged him countless times, only to be met with contempt. How can a woman like you be so shameless? You disgust me. Don't force me. I'll never say those words to you. Now, on the 3rd day of her postpartum recovery, Valentina sat helpless with a wailing baby. Oliver ignored her calls as he lovingly prepared a party for Zoe's child. And that was when she finally made up her mind to leave this world. Her phone buzzed. Jenny, her best friend, had sent a message. Has Oliver lost his damn mind? It's bad enough he's playing house with Zoe and another guy's kid. He even wrote a will. If anything happens to him, Tom Sue gets first inheritance rights. And now this, he just posted on Instagram announcing he's adopted Tom Sue as his own and renamed him Tom Sue. Valentina's heart clenched as she clicked the link. In 5 minutes, Oliver's post had gone viral. Top comment. This is like the female version of The Empress Returns, when simping turns pathological. Even rich CEOs go nuts. Valentina looked at her sleeping baby with a strange feeling in her chest. Just days ago, she'd tried to register the baby's surname. Oliver had sent his assistant to deliver the message. Madam, Mr. Sue says the baby can't take the Sue name. He's embarrassed and doesn't want to upset Miss Sue. Love or hate, it couldn't be more obvious. Valentina picked up her phone and left a comment. Congrats. Being a dad without labor, what a deal. She sent the screenshot to Jenny. Jenny called immediately. You're not even mad? I'm exhausted. This relationship is over. Valentina set down her phone, and the system voice returned. Host. Once you exit the world, Oliver's heart will revert to its severely ill state. If you want him cured after you leave, you can trade 5 years of your life with me. Oliver had suffered from a heart condition since childhood. 10 months ago, he was cursed, and it only made things worse. During episodes, he was rushed to the ICU multiple times, and even the most renowned doctors in L City were helpless. Valentina, worried sick, made a secret deal with the system. She used all the points she'd earned from winning Oliver's affection to exchange for the improvement of his heart condition. Her phone suddenly buzzed again. It was a reply from Oliver on her comment. You really should congratulate me. Tom Sue is way easier to raise than your kid. Valentina's brow furrowed slightly. Her heart aching like a needle had pricked it. I don't want to. All right then. Valentina lowered her head, eyes red as she looked at the baby. A nurse suddenly walked in. Seeing the frail Valentina, the nurse didn't bother hiding her impatience. Your test results are out. Don't forget to pick them up. Valentina gave a bitter smile and got up to retrieve the report. Oliver wasn't short on money. He just didn't love her. Even the postpartum care suite he arranged was the cheapest option. The staff here barely treated her decently. 10 minutes later, Valentina got the report, only to run into two very familiar faces. Oliver glanced at the test results related to the heart, his obsidian eyes glowing. Zoe, I wouldn't have recovered without you. Zoe wore a soft, flowy dress. She was Oliver's white moonlight, the dream girl. From afar, she looked delicate and fragile, clinging to Oliver's arm. She cooed, to help you heal. I begged the old traditional doctor from our hometown for almost a year before he finally agreed to write you a prescription. Now that your results are showing progress, you better spoil me even more. Oliver ruffled Zoe's hair, doting. Of course I will. You're my lucky star. Their exchange rang crystal clear in Valentina's ears. She gave a bitter smile. Turns out even love can be stolen. So can credit for your efforts. Valentina turned toward the elevator. Oliver tilted his head slightly and suddenly noticed her. He strode forward and yanked Valentina by the hand, snatching a glance at the report in her hand. Severe depression. In an instant, his dark eyes flared with rage. Don't tell me you bribed a doctor to fake a depression diagnosis? What are you trying to pull now? Claiming you're severely depressed during postpartum so people online will pity you? Valentina stood frozen for a few seconds. The man before her, cold and paranoid, was a far cry from the gentle soul he once was. Ever since Oliver got cursed, he'd started to suspect her constantly, always assuming the worst. When she had to drink with clients to avoid their harassment and ended up with alcohol poisoning, he stood there coldly and asked, "What did you take?" That act was pretty convincing. When she was pregnant, the nausea was so intense she couldn't eat, losing 20 pounds in 10 days. Oliver sneered. Faking it again? Every woman gets pregnant. Zoe said she ate great when she was expecting. You're just dramatic. If you can't handle it, maybe don't have the baby. Even during labor, she fainted several times. The doctors called him to sign consent forms, but he refused to believe her. She's usually tough as a bull and full of tricks. Giving birth isn't some big surgery. She's faking it to get attention. But before the curse, Oliver had been so careful. He knew she was allergic to alcohol and forbade anything with it near her. Valentina's allergic. She's delicate. Check every label when you shop. She had a weak constitution, always catching colds when seasons changed. Before, Oliver would worry sick. You're so fragile. I'll take you south during winters. You can't handle the cold. Even when she cut her finger slicing fruit, the old Oliver would panic, eyes turning red as he held her hand. Valentina, I can't bear to see you hurt. Valentina took a deep breath, just about to speak, when Zoe cut in first. Sis is probably jealous and faked the depression report just to get your attention. It's your fault for spoiling me too much. Oliver's face darkened, as if something finally clicked. He made a sudden decision and said in a deep voice, You already know, Tom is my child name. He starts preschool next year, and I can't let his mom stay without a title. Valentina, let's get a divorce. Give Zoe her place. Valentina paused, stunned for a moment, her mind blank. Then she nodded calmly. All right. Oliver's handsome face darkened. He hadn't expected Valentina to agree so easily. For the past 3 years, she had clung to him relentlessly, always pushing him to say those 3 words. Based on what he knew of her, there was no way she'd give in without a fight. Just as he was trying to make sense of it, Zoe hooked her arm around his, her pretty face full of barely hidden delight. We've finally gotten rid of her. Let's go celebrate tonight, okay? I want to go back to that steakhouse we loved. You can feed me and Tom, my 2 little foodies. The two walked away, arms entwined in affectionate closeness, leaving Valentina standing alone, unmoving. The next morning, Valentina had just woken up when she saw dozens of missed calls on her phone, all from Oliver. She was just about to call back when the door burst open. Oliver and Zoe stormed in furiously with a group of bodyguards. "Where's the family seal ring? Did you steal it?" Valentina lowered her gaze, the bruises beneath her eyes impossible to hide. "What ring? Ha! Still playing dumb?" The seal ring passed down through the Soothe family for generations. Oliver's face was ice cold. He waved his hand, and the bodyguards began to search Valentina's room. 5 minutes later, they found nothing. The search was noisy, and the sleeping baby woke up wailing loudly in fright. Zoe cast a look of disgust at the crib until her eyes landed on the baby's wrist. She gasped. "I knew it! She stole it! The ring's on the baby's hand!" Oliver walked over with slow, heavy steps, his expression dark as night. The seal ring had been strung onto a red thread, worn on the baby's wrist like a bracelet. He yanked it off without hesitation. His grip was so harsh that the red string scraped the baby's soft skin, leaving an angry red mark. "When did you steal it, Valentina? You're so damn greedy." Valentina clutched the crying baby to her chest, her heart aching. She stared at the man who'd become a stranger and felt herself sink to the bottom. "You made me move out of the Soothe family estate right after waking from the curse. And you banned me from the company. Tell me, how exactly was I supposed to steal it? You gave me that ring 4 years ago, before you lost your memory." Back then, they were celebrating their first wedding anniversary, and Oliver had gifted her the ring. He never told her how important it was. He only said that when their baby was born, he wanted to personally put it on their child's hand, and that she should keep it safe until then. That's why a few days ago, she had bought a red thread and tied it to the baby's wrist. Oliver's expression turned thunderous. He stepped forward and grabbed Valentina by the neck, his breathing ragged. "You expect me to believe I gave you something that important 4 years ago?" Zoe said she saw the ring in the main bedroom drawer just a few days ago. "And anyway, that ring is only meant for the heir of the Soothe family. Why the hell would I give it to someone like you? What right does your kid have to wear it?" Valentina was forced to tilt her head back. The pain in her neck brought tears to her eyes. Over the past year, every time Oliver insulted her, it tore her apart. But now, she was starting to get used to it. "I've said it 100 times. Before you were cursed. The one you loved wasn't Zoe, it was me. You even said only a baby from me would be." Valentina couldn't finish. Zoe tugged Oliver's arm with a pitiful expression. He snapped, cutting her off. "Enough. Stop bringing up the past in front of me. Do you know how disgusting it is every time you remind me of what I supposedly did for you?" "Zoe, if she doesn't admit it, call the police now." "Gladly," Zoe said, grabbing her phone and dialing with glee. The room was filled with the baby's sobs. Valentina's face was flushed red from being strangled. She forced out a few words. "If you call the police, I won't sign the divorce." Veins popped on Oliver's forehead. He took a deep breath, then another, and finally released her with clear reluctance. A flicker of malice flashed in Zoe's eyes. Her expression suddenly lit up. "To make sure she doesn't back out, have the lawyer bring the divorce papers here now. Make her sign on the spot." "All right, whatever you say," Oliver replied dotingly. The lawyer acted quickly. Half an hour later, Oliver laid the divorce agreement in front of Valentina. She skimmed it, and a cold, mocking smile curled on her lips. Of course, he wanted her to leave with nothing. She stared at Oliver, the man she had loved for 8 years. All the memories of their once sweet life flashed rapidly through her mind. Seeing that Valentina still hadn't signed, Oliver's brows furrowed deeply, his tone wary. "You're not thinking of making me say those 3 words before signing, are you?" Over the past year, Valentina had tried everything to get Oliver to say "I love you," just to break the curse. But now, she no longer hoped for it. "No, I won't ask you that anymore." She picked up the pen and signed swiftly. Oliver took the divorce papers in hand, and for the first time in a year, a smile appeared on his cold face. "Zoe, I can finally marry you." Zoe's delicate face turned bashful. Oliver continued tenderly. "Proposal, meeting the parents, engagement, wedding, not a single step can be skipped. We'll get married by the sea. Autumn." When the weather is perfect, you'll look beautiful in a wedding dress. Valentina trembled. 3 years ago, Oliver had said those exact same words to her. Valentina, don't you love the ocean? Let's get married by the beach. The autumn weather will be just right. You in a wedding dress. The sea breeze lifting your skirt, it'll be beautiful. The two of them talked about their wedding like no one else existed. Walking farther and farther away, Valentina spent a long time soothing her crying baby, then quietly cleaned up the mess in the room. The next morning, Oliver posted 2 Instagram updates. The first was a photo of the divorce agreement, captioned, "In the process of divorce." The second was a video of his proposal to Zoe. Evening, by the sea, romantic fireworks lit up the night sky. Oliver, in a sleek black suit, knelt on one knee. Zoe, surprised and delighted, covered her mouth with both hands. Behind them, little Tom Sue danced excitedly holding a sign, "Marry me." At the postpartum center, Jenny stormed in furiously, face full of annoyance. That bastard just signed the divorce, and now he's already proposing? It was even more extravagant than when he proposed to you. I heard he spent $50 million on the engagement ring just to please Zoe, and had all your old proposal videos scrubbed from the internet. Valentina, holding the baby, paused for a moment but remained calm. Good, that's just fine. The more he acted like this, the more certain she was that leaving was the right choice. Jenny stared at her, upset by Valentina's indifference. You should have posted that old proposal video. Let him choke on it. Everyone in L City knew how devoted he was to you. Now Zoe gets to flaunt it all? Valentina looked at Jenny, her eyes gentle and curved like a smile. Jenny, 6 days from now. I'm leaving. Jenny frowned. Leaving where? Valentina didn't mention anything about exiting this world. She just vaguely said she might never return to L City again. Jenny's eyes filled with sorrow, her gaze turning red-rimmed. I really wonder if Oliver ever regains his memories. Will he go insane from regret? For 3 days straight, Oliver didn't show up at the postpartum center. Valentina wrote goodbye letters by hand to her close friends and had them sent by courier. As for the things Oliver had once given her, he had already thrown them out when he forced her to leave the old Sue estate. Valentina didn't even need to pack. She had nothing left to take. She thought the last few days would pass quietly. But the next morning, Valentina woke up to find the baby's crib empty. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number appeared. Don't bother looking. Come to this cafe. A cold glint appeared in Valentina's eyes. Wearing slippers, she went downstairs and hailed a taxi to the cafe. As soon as she entered, she saw 2 familiar faces by the window. Zoe sat close beside Oliver, their bodies nearly touching. She fed him a spoonful of cake from her fork. Oliver frowned, saying he didn't like sweets, but still opened his mouth and ate it. Unlike their relaxed demeanor, Valentina's eyes scanned the cafe in a panic. There was no sign of the baby. Where's my child? What did you do with him? Zoe looked at her with a smirk, her red lips curling up. What's the rush? He's Oliver's child too. It's not like I sold him. Oliver's face darkened, his voice cold and decisive. She gave birth to him, but I won't acknowledge him. Even though Valentina already knew that the cursed Oliver had a poisonous tongue, her heart still ached at his words. I never intended for the baby to call you dad anyway. Just give him back to me, or I'll call the police. Zoe, seeing her panic, actually laughed. She slowly took out her phone and pulled up a live surveillance feed. In the vast Sue family mansion, a maid was feeding the baby milk. Seeing her soft, well-behaved baby, Valentina's eyes turned red, and she exhaled in relief. He's doing fine for now, but how he lives in the future depends on how you behave. Zoe hadn't even finished when Oliver cut in. I'm about to marry Zoe. She needs help with the preparations. You'll help her for the next few days. Once the wedding is over, we'll return the baby to you. Valentina stared at the cold man in front of her. He felt more and more like a stranger. You're threatening me with my child? Oliver, this is illegal. Zoe's red lips curved into a mocking smile. Then go call the police. Let's see who they side with. He's got Oliver's blood. After all, Oliver just doesn't recognize him, but the law might. Valentina fell silent. A wave of powerlessness washed over her. With Oliver's wealth and status, in a custody battle, the judge would likely rule in his favor. After a long pause, She bit her lip and asked hoarsely, "When's the wedding?" Oliver pulled out a wedding invitation and placed it in front of her. "In 3 days, after our ceremony is complete. You can take the baby and leave." He paused, then added, "It won't be hard work. Zoe's a considerate person." 3 days later was also the day Valentina was meant to leave this world. Fine. That afternoon, Zoe went to try on wedding dresses. Valentina stood nearby, coldly watching as Oliver patiently gave her suggestions. The man had great taste. The 5 gowns he picked each highlighted Zoe's figure perfectly. Zoe spent the whole afternoon trying them on, her smile never fading. But it wasn't enough for her. Noticing Valentina's distant expression, she called little Tom Sue over and gestured toward Valentina. "Valentina, help us take a quick family photo, just the 3 of us." Though she said quick, Zoe insisted Valentina kneel to take the picture, claiming it made them look taller. Valentina refused, but Oliver's face turned stormy. "What's the big deal? Kneeling won't kill you if you don't cooperate. Your baby doesn't get milk tonight." At the mention of her newborn, Valentina's eyes turned red. She glared at Oliver. After a long pause, she reluctantly got down on one knee to take the photo. But Zoe wasn't satisfied. She made Valentina shoot for half an hour straight. The final photo captured Zoe holding Tom Sue, while Oliver personally slid the Sue family heirloom ring onto the boy's finger. Valentina froze slightly and pressed the shutter. Zoe threw her a triumphant smile and leapt into Oliver's arms. The next day, the temperature dropped sharply. Zoe and Oliver were having their wedding photo shoot. When Valentina arrived, she was dressed warmly, but no sweater could block out the biting sea wind. Before long, her head throbbed and her cheeks flushed from the cold. Zoe's eyes glinted slyly. She began ordering Valentina around. "The photographer's busy. Valentina, could you help hold my train?" Valentina's head was spinning. She picked up the dress's hem and followed Zoe clumsily. Zoe deliberately sped up. Valentina stumbled, and the train slipped from her hands, landing in a dirty water bucket nearby. Zoe gasped dramatically. "Oh no, it's dirty. You didn't do it on purpose, did you, Oliver? What do we do?" Oliver's gaze landed on Valentina's pale face. She looked ill. His eyes darkened. "Pick it up. Go wash it clean." Valentina frowned, refusing outright. "I'm still in postpartum recovery. I can't touch cold water." Oliver's face grew darker, his voice turning even colder. "You're not some delicate princess. Washing something during postpartum won't kill you. Of course, you can refuse, but I won't mind delaying when you get to see your child." Valentina stared at the indifferent man before her, her nails digging deep into her palms. Their eyes locked in midair. His gaze was icy, devoid of any warmth. Valentina took a deep breath, then reluctantly picked up Zoe's gown and walked to the faucet. Cold water quickly soaked her hands. The chill made her whole body shiver. She washed for a full half hour until the fabric returned to its original color. Only then did Oliver let her go. Then he handed her a blow dryer to dry it completely. Zoe tugged Oliver's sleeve, putting on a show of concern. "That's enough. I know she did it on purpose, but we don't have to go that far." Her words were like pouring fuel on a fire. Oliver's face darkened even more. "You're too kind. She's rotten to the core. 8 years ago, she cast a curse on me, used every trick to get close for 3 years, and stole me away from you. That's the only reason I was foolish enough to treat her well. If you hadn't gone through all that trouble to break the curse a year ago, I'd still be living in ignorance." Valentina's expression froze. So that was how Zoe explained the curse to him. No wonder. No matter how hard she tried this past year, Oliver never believed her. But Oliver, if you just bothered to look into the past, you'd know Zoe once left you. And yet, you didn't even give me a chance to explain. Oliver's gaze turned to her again, his voice tinged with bitterness. "Since you heard it all, aren't you going to explain?" Valentina met his accusing eyes and smirked sarcastically. "Honestly, I regret staying here for you back then." Oliver's face stiffened. Her words sounded off. He was about to press her further when Zoe tugged his arm sweetly. "It's getting cold. Let's finish the shoot." The wedding photo shoot dragged on for over 3 hours. Finally, Oliver and Zoe got into their Bentley and drove off. But moments later, the car circled back and stopped in front of Valentina. She looked on in confusion as the door opened and the two stepped out. Oliver walked up behind her and, without warning, pulled her into a hold from behind. Valentina's arms were pinned. She struggled, alarmed. "What are you doing, Oliver?" Zoe stepped up to her and suddenly raised her hand. Smack! A sharp slap landed across Valentina's face. The strike wasn't even that fast. Valentina could have dodged it if her arms weren't restrained. By the time she broke free, Zoe had already pulled her hand back. Valentina's head rang from the impact. She was momentarily stunned. "Are you both insane?" Furious, she raised her hand to slap Zoe back, but Oliver caught her wrist midair. His face darkened, voice seething. "You actually dared to fight back?" Valentina's wrist went numb under his grip. She trembled with rage. "I got slapped for no reason. Why the hell shouldn't I fight back?" Zoe pouted innocently. "You're mad? I just mentioned in the car how you wasted years of our lives and dirted my wedding dress. I was upset. The internet says if someone pisses you off, just slap them. But I'm timid, you know? I was scared you'd hit me back. Oliver spoils me. He said if I wanted to slap you, he'd hold you down. And come on, I didn't even hit you that hard. Why are you so angry?" Hearing all this, Valentina felt like she'd fallen into a frozen lake. Her eyes locked on Oliver, her voice chilling. "So you volunteered to hold me down just so she could slap me?" Zoe quickly stepped in front of Oliver, protectively. "Don't blame Oliver. I was the one who wanted to slap you. Blame yourself for cursing him, for destroying our love. I just wanted to vent a little." Valentina snapped. Her fury exploded. "Who the hell cursed who? When did I ever curse Oliver? You toxic snake, when did you become the victim here?" She looked straight at Oliver, her voice sharp with pain. "Did it ever occur to you that I might have been the real victim all along?" Zoe's eyes welled with tears, and she looked at Oliver, full of grievance. Oliver's heart ached seeing her like that. He didn't even register what Valentina had said. He pulled the crying Zoe into his arms and said, half angry, "Enough. You cursed me and made me and Zoe stay apart for 7 years. Then enjoyed 4 years of my love. She only slapped you once. You're not the victim. Honestly, you have no right to be mad." With that, Oliver dragged Zoe into the car and drove away. Valentina stood frozen, stunned by his words, as if thrown into an icy lake. It was a long time before she could finally hail a taxi and head to the hospital. Along the way, she stared out the window at the scenery flashing by in reverse. She tilted her head slightly, fighting back tears. Half an hour later, she arrived at the hospital, with an IV in her hand and an ice pack on her flushed face. Soon, Valentina fell asleep, and memories from the past came flooding back. 5 years ago, she and Oliver also took wedding photos by the sea. He had been afraid her feet would hurt on the sand, so he had his assistant lay down soft pads in advance. During her period, he never allowed her to touch anything cold. Back then, everyone in El City knew that the eldest son of the Sue family was madly in love with his wife. Now, the man who forced her to wash a wedding gown in freezing water during postpartum, the man who held her down so his ex could slap her, was the same man. But there was only 1 day left. 1 day, and she'd be free of this world. The next morning, the wedding by the sea, Valentina was forced to wear a bridesmaid dress. Just as she stepped out of the restroom, she ran into Zoe, who was glowing with smug delight. Valentina lowered her head and tried to leave, wanting no interaction, but Zoe stopped her with a sly smile. "Once the wedding is over, you can go to the old estate to pick up the baby. I've prepared a surprise for you." Valentina frowned, unease creeping into her chest. She went to the wedding venue and waited for the ceremony to begin. All around her, whispers from the guests floated by. Aren't Oliver and Valentina not officially divorced yet? Word is Oliver couldn't wait to marry Zoe. They're doing the ceremony first and registering once the divorce goes through. Just proves the original lover never beats the white moonlight. Valentina said nothing. She just stared at the time. Finally, at the chosen auspicious hour, Oliver stood on stage, watching Zoe walk toward him in her wedding gown. They exchanged vows, drank their ceremonial wine, and Valentina could wait no longer. She rushed to the Sue family estate. Following Zoe's instructions, she went to the guest room on the 2nd floor. The moment she opened the door, a strong stench of blood hit her. Her heart dropped. She flipped on the lights. The baby lay in the crib, barely breathing. His delicate arms and torso were covered in bloody lash marks, even his tiny face was bruised and torn. A nearby phone began playing an audio recording, the baby's pitiful cries as he was being beaten. Valentina broke into tears. Pure agony on her face. Hatred filled her heart like fire. She grabbed the phone and slammed it to the ground, it shattered into pieces. Her hands shaking. She lifted her baby into her arms. Host. Time to leave the world. Valentina's eyes were red. She sniffed, barely holding back sobs, and whispered to the system. System. He's hurt so badly. I can't just leave like this. Can you help me fake his death as a wedding gift for them? Confirmed. Thank you. With that, Valentina and the baby vanished from the guest room. At the wedding venue, Zoe and Oliver were making toasts to the guests, smiling and radiant. Suddenly, a baby's corpse crashed from above. Bang! The body landed squarely on the main banquet table, scattering dishes and splattering food everywhere. The entire table trembled. Plates shattered instantly. Glassware fell to the ground. Guests at the main table screamed and jumped to their feet. Horrified gasps filled the venue as everyone turned to look. What is that? Oh my God. Is that a baby? Where did it fall from? Why is he covered in whip marks? Was he beaten to death? Who could be so cruel, hurting a newborn baby like that? Hearing the commotion, Oliver, who had been making a toast, paused. His expression darkened as he walked toward the main table. What happened? Madame Sue still looked shaken, her face pale. Out of nowhere, a baby's corpse fell onto the table. I didn't see anything flying overhead. Who could be this vicious? The child can't be more than a few days old. Oliver's gaze landed on the baby's corpse. The tiny infant was covered in blood. His soft arms and body were marked with deep lashes from being whipped. Even his delicate face was mangled beyond recognition. The sight was horrifying. For some reason, as Oliver stared at the baby, a sharp pain suddenly gripped his heart. He clutched his chest, waited a moment to steady his breath, then said coldly, "That's enough for today. I'll have everyone leave and review the surveillance footage to see if any suspicious person came in." Zoe looked at the baby, her eyes flickering with guilt. Hearing Oliver's decision, she tugged his arm, displeased. "We're still in the middle of our wedding. Can't we just ignore it for now?" Oliver gently squeezed her hand, placating. "Be good. A life is at stake. We can redo the ceremony later." Zoe pouted unhappily, but didn't argue further. That evening, Oliver returned to the old estate. The first thing he did was ask a nearby maid, "Where's the baby?" The maid looked up, confused. Mr. Sue never asked about the madam's child. Why was he suddenly interested? Miss Sue came by this afternoon, said she was taking the baby with her. Oliver didn't think much of it and went upstairs to the study. Not long after, his assistant rushed in, holding a physical report. Looking grim. "President Sue, we couldn't identify a suspect yet, but we have the autopsy results. The baby appears to be your child, with Miss Li." "Impossible." Oliver's face went dark. If the dead child was really Valentina's, with her personality, she would have stormed the place by now. Back when he had been unconscious for a week and woke up, Valentina told him she was pregnant. He tried several times to make her abort, but Valentina refused every time. "The doctor said my body's weak. If I abort, I might never be able to conceive again. If you force me, I'll cling to the title of Mrs. Sue forever, and Zoe will never take my place." Left with no choice, they reached an agreement. She could keep the baby, but neither the Sue family nor he would acknowledge it. Valentina had remained silent for a long time, but eventually nodded. If it really was her child, and he died, how could she not come here to fight me? The assistant handed him the report. Oliver scanned it, and his pupils contracted. Name of deceased, Romeo. Age, 10 days. Biological relationship confirmed between deceased and Valentina Li, mother. Where's Valentina? The baby was here at the estate. Find out who killed him. He didn't care for the child, but that baby still carried the Sue family's blood. The assistant hesitated. "We've begun investigating. I went by the postpartum center earlier, but Miss Li wasn't there." Oliver frowned. The baby's corpse crashing a wedding had already gone viral online. Valentina cherished her son. There's no way she didn't know. He pulled out his phone to call her, only to realize he didn't even have her number saved. Months ago, Valentina had sent him a long message begging him to say I love you. He found it annoying, cursed her with something like disgusting, don't bother me, and deleted her number. After that, she never messaged him again. What's her number? He asked. The assistant looked up, surprised at Oliver's sudden urgency. He recited a string of numbers from memory with ease. Oliver frowned, clearly suspicious. How do you remember Valentina's phone number so well? The assistant hesitated, then explained tactfully. It was your instruction, sir. You told us to always prioritize anything related to Miss Li. A flicker of darkness passed through Oliver's eyes. Was the love curse Valentina cast on him really that powerful? He stared at the familiar number, pressed dial. The line connected, only for a cold, mechanical voice to answer. The number you have dialed is no longer in service. Disconnected? She's not at the postpartum center, then she must have gone home. Where does she live? Half an hour later, a Bentley slowly pulled into the Silver Lake residential complex and came to a stop on the ground floor. Oliver rang the doorbell, but no one answered. The building staff came and unlocked the door for him. Oliver stepped into the apartment, brows furrowed. The spacious living room was empty, eerily spotless. There wasn't a single item belonging to Valentina or the baby. The place was so clean, it was as if no one had ever lived there. But just months ago, he had come here multiple times, pressuring her to abort, find out where she was last seen. No sooner had he finished speaking than a sharp, stabbing pain pierced through Oliver's chest again. He staggered, barely managing to grab the edge of the table to steady himself. His face turned ghostly pale. The assistant rushed forward, eyes wide in worry. President Sue, are you okay? I'll take you to the hospital. Private hospital, L City, DR. Lin reviewed Oliver's heart scans, his expression grim. He took out the report from 7 days ago to compare, muttering under his breath, this can't be right. How did his heart deteriorate so rapidly in just a few days? Oliver looked awful. Tell me the truth. What do the results say? Knowing the gravity of the situation, Dr. Lin could only report bluntly, President Sue, I don't know what's happened to you recently, but your heart condition has suddenly worsened. It's back to how it was 10 months ago. If it keeps up, you might only have 1 year left to live. The assistant's eyes widened in shock as he stared at Oliver. Oliver's face was ice cold. After a moment of silence, he said, don't let anyone know about my condition yet. He paused, then looked at his assistant. Find out where Valentina is. The assistant hesitated, then asked cautiously, do you think Miss Li is involved in all this? Oliver stared at the medical report, shook his head slowly. He wasn't sure, but with everything that had happened in just 1 day, something felt off. A baby's corpse crashing a wedding, Valentina vanishing, his own health suddenly collapsing. Oliver didn't return home that night. He stayed in the resting lounge of the office building. The next morning, his phone buzzed. It was a call from Zoe. Where are you? I just woke up and realized you didn't come home last night. Oliver frowned, glanced out the window. I had things to take care of. I'll be back tonight. Zoe said a few more words, then hung up, but her eyes were cold, glittering with malice. She turned toward the 2 men in black standing before her. Useless. Didn't I tell you clearly? Beat the baby half to death, but make sure he lives. The leader of the men looked panicked. When we left, the child was still breathing. Zoe narrowed her eyes, then flopped lazily onto the sofa. The maid said Valentina came to pick him up at exactly 5:10 p.m. When she returned, Zoe deliberately checked the surveillance footage from the wedding that afternoon. The baby had fallen onto the main banquet table at exactly 5:15 p.m. It was truly bizarre. You two avoided the cameras when you entered, right? The 2 men in black exchanged a glance, then nodded in unison. Yes, we did. Good. Zoe instructed them to head downstairs, avoiding the maids, then turned to go to the bathroom. She had barely taken 2 steps when a sharp pain hit her chest. And suddenly, cough! She spat out a mouthful of blood. Miss Sue! Zoe stared in horror at the blood splattered on the floor. The witch who helped her cast the curse had warned her, this was a mother-child curse. And the one thing to avoid was the mother curse host bleeding excessively. Once the curse took effect, she had to nourish the parasite with her blood. But if she hemorrhaged, She would lose control over the child curse, and Oliver might gradually regain his memories. But wasn't the backlash supposed to happen 2 years later? Zoe wiped her lips. Another wave of pain surged through her chest, and another mouthful of blood followed. No, she had to see Oliver immediately. As long as the mother and child curses stayed close together, it would suppress memory recovery. She snatched up her phone and called Oliver. Sue Corporation, President's office. The assistant burst in holding a document, looking panicked. President Sue, we've confirmed it, Miss Li didn't disappear. She's dead. Oliver froze mid-signature, his head snapping up, eyes wide. What? That's impossible. The assistant's face was pale as he handed over the death certificate. Deceased, Valentina. Time of death, January 21st, 2025, 17:15. Cause of death, classified. Oliver stared at the name Valentina in disbelief. A sharp pain struck his chest, then everything went black. He collapsed. Just as he hit the ground, his phone lit up. Zoe was calling. When Oliver regained consciousness, it was already 3 p.m. As soon as he opened his eyes, he saw his assistant's worried face. The assistant sighed in relief when he woke up. But before he could speak, Oliver rasped out a question. When and where was Valentina last seen? The assistant bowed his head. Miss Li was last seen at 5:10 p.m. on the 21 St. at the Sue estate. Oliver propped himself up, leaning against the hospital bed, his brows tightly furrowed. So, Valentina's time of death matched Romeo's. The assistant watched Oliver in deep thought, his own heart racing with emotion. After you passed out, Miss Sue kept calling your phone. When you didn't answer, she called mine, asking where you were. I didn't tell her. Truthfully, the assistant had always thought Valentina was better than Zoe. When she was the Sue family's lady, she treated the staff with kindness. Everyone respected her. But Zoe, she relied on Oliver's favor and treated them like dirt. Oliver pursed his lips, eyes dark and unreadable. Last night, he dreamt of Valentina. A long, vivid dream full of memories. But when he woke up, he couldn't remember a single moment of it. Stranger still, ever since he fainted. Every time he thought of her, his chest ached painfully. Meanwhile, at Sue Corp headquarters, Zoe still couldn't get through to Oliver. Desperate, she called the witch who helped her cast the curse. I've been vomiting blood since last night. The parasite inside me is weakening. Oliver's probably starting to regain his memory. Didn't you say the curse backlash wouldn't begin for at least 2 years? There was silence on the other end. After a few seconds, the witch's hoarse voice came through. Someone interfered. Who? Zoe frowned. Was it Valentina? The witch furrowed his brows. He couldn't see clearly who had meddled. So he simply warned, find Oliver as soon as possible. Stay by his side. Only by staying close can you stop his memories from returning. There's no other way? No. Zoe's delicate features twisted in frustration. She hung up and quickly tried to call both Oliver and his assistant. Neither answered. Unable to hold it in anymore, she stormed to the front desk of Sue Corp, shouting, where is Oliver? Where is he? The receptionist looked terrified. Miss Sue, we're just reception. We don't have access to President Sue's itinerary. Zoe's face darkened further. Her chest burned with rage as she said coldly, you're fired. The receptionist froze, eyes reddening. Miss Sue, what did I do wrong? Please, my father is sick. I really need this job. Zoe glanced at her coldly, then sneered as she called HR. The HR manager, eager to please Zoe, immediately promised to terminate the receptionist by end of day. Half an hour later, the assistant returned to the hospital room, hesitating as he reported, President Sue. Miss Sue still couldn't find you. She caused a scene at HQ and even fired the front desk girl. Oliver frowned, his expression hardening. Tell her to come here. Soon after, Zoe got the assistant's call and learned that Oliver was at the private hospital. Relieved, she immediately rushed over. But not long into her drive, a white sedan suddenly began tailing her wildly. At a red light, the sedan swerved aggressively, slamming straight into Zoe's car from the left. Crash! The violent collision left Zoe with severe bleeding and a crumpled front half of her car. In the driver's seat of the white sedan was the receptionist, eyes burning with hatred. and at the moment Zoe started bleeding heavily, a parasite crawled out from her chest. Suddenly, her cars had burst into flames. The insect was incinerated instantly. Zoe managed to crawl out from the wreck, dragging her wounded body. At the hospital, the moment the parasite burned, Oliver clutched his head in agony, his tall frame curled up, veins bulging across his forehead. It felt like something was drilling into his skull. Memories, warm, precious, long-lost memories with Valentina flooded back in torrents. Over an hour passed. When he opened his eyes again, his black pupils were filled with deep, overwhelming regret. He whispered in anguish, "Valentina. I'm sorry, my Valentina." Meanwhile, in another world, Valentina carried her dying baby back to her original world. She looked down at her wounded son and sprinted toward the nearest children's hospital. A middle-aged female doctor was stunned when she saw Romeo's injuries. Who did this? What kind of monster would hurt a baby like this? Valentina's eyes turned red. She choked out softly, "His father's first love. Doctor, please save him." The doctor sighed and immediately arranged for emergency hospitalization. 2 days later, Romeo's condition had stabilized. His wounds began to heal slowly, but Valentina remained worried. "Doctor, will my baby have scars on his face?" The doctor frowned and replied cautiously, "He's still young. Normally, he shouldn't." Valentina sat beside the hospital bed, unable to hold back her tears. She lowered her head and sobbed quietly. It was her fault. She should have gone to pick up the baby earlier. Only 10 days old, and he had already suffered so much because of her. She didn't even deserve to be a mother. As she drowned in guilt, the system's mechanical voice suddenly rang in her mind. "Host, I have good news. Want to hear it?" Valentina froze. She picked up a tissue and wiped away the tears on her face. "No, but I want to tell you anyway." "Go ahead." "After you left that world, I made the baby's body fall from the sky at the wedding. Then I fabricated your death certificate. Oliver is starting to suspect Zoe. He's smart, even without his memory. His instincts are coming back." Valentina's expression turned cold. When it came to the baby, she still held resentment toward Oliver. Even if it was Zoe who sent people to harm him, it was Oliver who indulged her in the first place. He let someone take her baby away in secret. "It doesn't matter anymore. We're divorced. Even if he regains his memory, it has nothing to do with me." She ignored the system and glanced at her bank account, just a few thousand left. She frowned. How was she supposed to make money? But the system didn't go silent. "Host, I have another piece of good news. Go on. Given your outstanding performance these past 8 years, I linked your bank account from that world to this one." Valentina blinked, stunned for a few seconds, and checked her balance again. 80,007,800 yuan. That 80 million had accumulated during the 4 years she and Oliver were in love. He worried she wouldn't have enough to spend and transferred 20 million to her every year. "Thank you." That evening, Valentina fell in love with a lakeside house. The neighborhood had stunning scenery, fresh air, and was newly built, perfect for living. She bought it in full. Then she rushed back to the hospital. A week later, Romeo's wounds began to heal. Seeing this, Valentina could finally breathe a little easier. Just then, the system's voice rang again. "Host, want some juicy gossip?" Valentina frowned. Why had she never realized how gossipy the system was? Seeing she didn't respond, it kept talking. "Praise me. I did something to Zoe. She's scared now." Valentina looked up, puzzled. "What did you do to her?" "Nothing much. Just a little curse tweak, made her cough up blood nonstop." "Who told her to be so cruel to your baby?" The system's robotic voice sounded a bit proud. After a pause, it continued. "I didn't expect this, but the moment I acted." Oliver's memory recovery accelerated. Valentina said nothing. During her 10 months of pregnancy, Oliver's cruelty had already worn down her love to nothing. She no longer expected anything from him. She no longer cared. That afternoon, the female doctor came to check on Romeo. Seeing Valentina looking exhausted, she gently reminded, "Mom needs to take care of herself too. You can't fall apart before your baby recovers." "Thank you, doctor." Valentina lowered her head. As soon as the doctor left, The system's voice returned again, urgent this time. Host. Breaking news, the mother parasite is dead. Oliver has regained his memory. Valentina's hand froze as she held Romeo's chart. Her pupils constricted sharply. At that very moment, in another hospital room, Oliver sat on the edge of his bed, full of remorse. His shoulders slumped. His face was pale and empty. Something about him had changed, but the assistant couldn't quite say what. President Sue, are you okay? Oliver slowly looked up, his lips trembling as he whispered, I remember everything. He deserved it, every bit of it. He had hurt Valentina, the woman he loved the most. But by the time his memories returned, it was too late. His baby was dead. His wife was dead. Zoe. It had to be her. She must have been the one who had him cursed. The assistant's eyes widened, but a sigh of relief escaped his lips. President Sue. Thank goodness, you finally remember. For the past 10 months, he had silently felt injustice from Madame Valentina. She had suffered too much. Where is Valentina Li's body? Oliver's voice trembled as he spoke. The assistant shook his head. I've been searching nonstop these past 2 days, but I haven't found her body. Oliver's expression turned grim, a strange glint flashing in his black eyes. Then maybe, she's not dead. The assistant looked at him, startled, then gently offered, President Sue, the death certificate can't be forged. Oliver shook his head, his voice resolute, unless I see her body with my own eyes. I won't believe she's dead. He paused, then asked coldly, where's Zoe? At the mention of her name, a flash of disgust appeared in the assistant's gaze. She abused her authority to fire the receptionist. The receptionist ran her down with a car. She's currently in surgery. Oliver narrowed his eyes and stroked the prayer beads in his hand. She'd better not wake up, because once she does, she'll pay for it. I'll investigate everything about that curse. Recalling that day, Oliver winced slightly from a headache, but fragments of memory surfaced. It was Valentina's birthday. She loved the sea, so he hosted a seaside party. While returning to the hotel to get her gift, a woman brushed against his shoulder, and then everything went black. When he woke up again, a week had passed. The one who cursed me, it had to be a woman. Check who Zoe's been in contact with lately, and whoever hurt my son, they'll all pay. His eyes turned cold, his tone deadly. Cancel the divorce paperwork. Valentina was his only wife. Yes, sir. The assistant's eyes lit up, full of renewed energy. In their eyes, the elegant and kind Valentina was the only woman worthy of being Mrs. Sue, not Zoe. That phony second-rate imposter. 1 week later, in an abandoned factory, the thick stench of blood filled the air. 2 men in black were tied to chairs, stripped down to their undergarments. Their bodies were covered in whip marks, back, limbs, faces, everywhere. Upon closer inspection, the injuries were identical to the ones Romeo had suffered. Fear filled their eyes. Monster. Oliver Sue was a lunatic. Who could have imagined he'd actually recreate Romeo's injuries exactly, even instructing his men to make them worse? Was it you two who hurt my son? In the dead silence of the factory, Oliver's voice was calm, but chilling. The leader's voice shook. President Sue. Yes, we did whip the baby, but we didn't kill him. Oliver stood, took the whip from his bodyguard, narrowed his eyes, and lashed down hard. Snap! Both men groaned in agony. You dared to lay a hand on my son? Where did you get that kind of courage? The 2 men in black exchanged a look. The younger one broke down first, completely unable to hold it in. It was Zoe! She ordered us to do it. Everything was under her instructions. How could you do that to such a small child? He was only 10 days old. Oliver narrowed his eyes. His mind was filled with the horrific image of Romeo before he died. He gently rubbed the prayer beads in his hand and ordered the bodyguard beside him. Don't let them die. Keep them alive. Treat their wounds when needed. Once they're healed, let them relive exactly how they whipped my son. If they have trouble remembering, help them recall. Thoroughly. The bodyguard nodded slightly. Yes, President Sue. In the Bentley, Oliver stared at the scenery speeding past the window. His eyes were full of endless regret. He could punish all those who hurt Valentina and their son, but he had also hurt her. That night, Oliver deleted every post about Zoe on his social media. Then he posted a statement, attaching a photo of the torn divorce agreement. Still married. Valentina is my one and only wife. He followed up with another post, a bounty for Valentina. Due to illness, I had memory loss and forgot everything about the love between me and my wife. Valentina, I publicly apologize for all the harm I caused her during this period. My wife is still angry with me. Whoever finds her and contacts my assistant will be rewarded with 100 billion yuan. The moment the posts went live, they shot to the top of trending searches. Netizens flooded the comments. No wonder the CEO was acting weird this year. He lost his memory. Valentina suffered so much. My heart breaks for her. She really loved him. Please, I beg you, let them reunite. This couple deserves a happy ending. Oliver scrolled through every app, every photo folder on his phone, trying to find a single photo of Valentina, but it was as if Valentina Li had vanished into thin air. Every trace of her, gone. A deep ache welled in Oliver's chest. Valentina, you can be mad at me, yell at me, even hit me. Just don't ignore me. Please. I love you so much. How could I ever be willing to hurt you? That same night, at El City Private Hospital, Zoe lay in bed, staring in horror at her phone screen. The words "still married, Valentina is my only wife" made her pupils shrink in shock. Oliver remembered. What now? With Oliver's personality, he'd surely destroy her. Just then, the door opened. A nurse walked in within 4. She smiled and said warmly, "Miss Su, time for your drip." President Su called this afternoon and specifically asked the doctors to take extra care of you. He even hired a personal nutritionist. Seems like he really wants you to recover quickly. Zoe jerked her head up, grabbing the nurse's wrist. What did you say? Oliver told you to take care of me? The nurse blinked, unaware of the recent posts, and said with a touch of envy, "Why so surprised? Miss Su? Isn't President Su always doting on you? He even posted recently that he wanted to recognize your son as his own." After the nurse left, Zoe stared at Oliver's newly posted Instagram, muttering, "Maybe Oliver started falling for me recently. That's why he asked the doctors and nurses to look after me." Yes, that must be it. She looked out the window, pleased. Even if he wasn't replying to her messages or answering her calls, he still loved her. 1 month later, Su Corporation, President's office. The assistant knocked and entered. Zoe's recovered completely. He was honestly confused. Wasn't President Su trying to get revenge for Madame Valentina? So why hire extra doctors and even a nutritionist for Miss Su? Oliver signed the last page of a document calmly, then slowly looked up. His black eyes were icy. "Take me to the hospital." At the hospital's top-floor VIP suite, Zoe was sipping on soup. After a month of recovery, her body had improved a lot, and her complexion looked healthier than ever. Seeing Oliver walk in, Zoe lit up with joy and quickly stood up. "You're here. I missed you so much." Over the past month, she had sent Oliver countless messages, made countless calls, but he never replied. She had planned to visit him herself once she recovered. She never expected him to come first, but Oliver simply looked at the woman rushing into his arms with a gaze full of disgust. He turned slightly to the side, sat down on the couch with cold grace, and stared at her like she was a stranger. "You've recovered well." His eyes were void of emotion, as if he were inspecting an object. Zoe felt a chill run down her spine. Still, she summoned her courage and tried to approach him again, only for Oliver to push her back effortlessly with one finger. Stunned, she met his cold gaze as he rubbed the prayer beads in his hand. A chilling edge crept into his voice. "Since you're all better, shouldn't we start settling accounts?" Panic appeared on Zoe's face. She had spent a year by Oliver's side. She knew this tone. It was the calm before the storm. I don't know what you mean. You're clever enough to have someone curse me, and now you pretend you don't understand?" Oliver narrowed his eyes, his long fingers gripping her chin, firm and cold. Zoe winced in pain and instinctively tried to pull away. Was he really here to settle scores? She was terrified. She backed away, looking frantically toward the door. In a split second, she turned and tried to bolt. Oliver let out a cold laugh. unmoving, still seated on the sofa. As if nothing happened, Zoe rushed to the door, yanked it open, only to be met with a wall of black-clad bodyguards. The lead bodyguard stepped forward coldly. "Miss Sue, please return to your room." Despair filled Zoe's eyes as she staggered backward. Oliver's eyes landed on her legs. His lips curled into a mocking smile. "You've recovered well. You can run now. So, do you remember how you cursed me?" Zoe trembled, backing away. To her, Oliver now looked like a demon straight from hell, cold and merciless. I don't know. I was framed." Oliver leaned lazily back on the sofa, a cruel smile playing on his lips. He looked like he was laughing, but there was nothing warm in that laugh. "It's fine if you don't understand. I do." He clapped his hands lightly. The assistant brought in a box. When it was opened, it revealed a collection of torture tools. Oliver's voice echoed through the room, as cold as ice. "First account, after I was cursed. You encouraged me to throw Valentina out of the Sue family home. How do you plan to pay for that? With your hand? Your face? Or maybe your foot?" Zoe paled, staring at the tools. She cried out, trying to defend herself. "I didn't mean to. I didn't. I only wanted her gone because I love you." Oliver didn't even glance at her. He pointed to a small, sharp knife in the box. "Then you'll pay with your hand." The assistant picked up the knife and stepped in front of Zoe, his voice cold. "Miss Sue, please give me your hand." Zoe hid both hands behind her back, trembling uncontrollably. The assistant gestured subtly toward the door. A bodyguard entered and pressed Zoe's shoulders down firmly. Without hesitation, the assistant sliced at her pinky finger. Snap! A finger fell to the floor. Zoe's screams pierced the entire ward. Wild and hysterical, Oliver finally smiled. A twisted satisfaction lit up his otherwise emotionless face. "The first account is settled. Now, let's talk about the second." "The first account is settled. Let's move on to the second," Oliver said calmly. "You secretly arranged the worst postpartum center for Valentina, and didn't let her switch. How should you pay for that?" He paused slightly, then added coldly, "Same rule, hand, foot, or face." Zoe's face turned ghostly pale. With a thud, she dropped to her knees and began sobbing. "Oliver, I was wrong. Please, I beg you, spare me. I didn't mean to. I only loved you too much and wanted Valentina gone." Oliver glanced at her with disgust, then picked up a wet wipe and began cleaning the finger he had used to touch her chin. He wiped so hard the skin turned red, then tossed the tissue into the trash with revulsion. "You ran pretty fast just now. So, use your legs to pay." With that, he pointed toward a candle inside the box. The assistant picked it up and lit the wick. The candle flared to life. Zoe's eyes widened in horror. The bodyguards grabbed her again. The assistant called in another guard, who pulled off Zoe's shoes. A second later, the assistant began dripping hot wax onto Zoe's thighs. "Aya!" Her shrieks pierced the room. He dropped wax over and over, a dozen times at least. Zoe's veins popped out on her forehead from the pain. She cried herself hoarse, but Oliver still hadn't said stop. The assistant kept going. Half an hour later, Oliver clapped his hands. Zoe's legs were covered in burns, red, blistered, and horrifying. "Third account," Oliver continued. "You accused Valentina of stealing the heirloom ring. Pay for that one with your face." "Fourth account, you ordered someone to whip my son. For that, your body." "Fifth account, by the time he was done, every single tool in the torture box had been used." Zoe's body was a bloody mess, bruised and swollen from head to toe. She stared at Oliver with a mixture of terror and madness. Now she understood why people in El City whispered that Oliver Sue was a cold-blooded demon, a man who devoured bones after the flesh. She had thought he still had feelings for her, but no, he'd kept her alive, healed her, only so he could destroy her slowly. He was merciless. 3 hours later, Oliver finally stood up. Zoe was barely breathing, lying limp on the ground. He turned to his assistant. "Have someone guard the door. If she still can't remember what she did to Valentina, then come here every day. Help refresh her memory." He narrowed his eyes. "Keep her alive. This is a hospital. If needed, call the doctor." "Yes, President Sue." The assistant looked out the window. In his heart, he whispered, "Madam, are you watching? President Sue has avenged you." Just as Oliver stepped out of the room, Zoe's maniacal laughter echoed through the ward. She laughed wildly and screamed, "So what if you do all this now? Romeo is dead. Valentina loved children more than anything. You think she'll ever forgive you? There's a life between you now. Oliver, you and Valentina will never go back to what you had." Oliver turned back, walked up to her, and tapped her chin with his shoe. His voice was cold as death. "That's why you have to stay alive, Zoe. We've got all the time in the world. I'll torment you slowly." Zoe burst into hysterical laughter. Perhaps after enduring hell, she had nothing left to fear. "Even if you kill me, you'll never get your love back. If I can't have him, neither can you." Oliver lifted his foot and ground her face into the floor with his heel, hard enough to make it swell and twist. Only then did he sneer, "Killing you would be too kind. Don't celebrate too soon. I'll come up with better tricks later. We will take our time." He turned to the assistant. "Her mouth is filthy. Let's clean it out. Get a hose and rinse it. Let her learn her lesson." "Yes, President Sue." 1 month later, Oliver still hadn't found Valentina, despite offering a massive reward. None of the leads had panned out. Still, every time a new clue came in, Oliver would personally investigate it. Even the assistant couldn't take it anymore. "President Sue, maybe I should go check first. Make sure it's real before you go." Oliver shook his head and rubbed his brow. "I want to see her the moment she's found." Just as he spoke, his chest tightened sharply. His handsome face turned bluish-purple, and he passed out again. When he opened his eyes again, it was the middle of the night the next day. The assistant, finally seeing him awake, checked the wall clock and frowned. "President Sue, this month alone, you've fainted 8 times, and the time you stay unconscious is getting longer. Today, it was 19 hours. Dr. Lin just said, if this keeps up, your condition will deteriorate quickly. At most, you've got 7 months left." Oliver lay on the hospital bed, staring blankly at the ceiling. In truth, he didn't even want to wake up. He had just dreamed that Valentina came back. He had begged her for so long, and in the dream, she had finally softened and forgiven him. But their child was still gone. 7 months, that's enough. The assistant sighed. Just then, his phone rang. After listening for a few seconds, his face turned dark. "President Sue, the hospital just called. Someone broke in with a group of men and took Zoe away." Oliver narrowed his eyes. His face, pale as paper, turned even colder. "Who?" The assistant hesitated, then answered cautiously. Martin, Oliver's old brother. More than 10 years ago, they were as close as blood. They even joked they could share one pair of pants, but Martin betrayed him and fled the country overnight. Since then, they were enemies. Oliver's eyes darkened. A terrifying aura radiated from him. "So, he's back? Perfect. I've been holding in a lot of rage. Now I have someone to unleash it on." That same night, Oliver made a public announcement. The Sue Corporation would open an overseas division. Any company that broke ties with Jiang Corporation could directly sign with Sue Corp. The moment this was announced, the international business world erupted. Jiang Corporation had been a rising star in recent years. Its future looked bright. But compared to Sue Corporation, a century-old titan, it wasn't even close. One by one, companies withdrew from Jiang Corp, choosing Sue Corp instead. At a private villa in El City, in the study, Martin Chan sat behind his desk. His secretary reported over the phone, clearly panicked. "Something's gone wrong. Mr. Chan, Oliver is obviously targeting us. Now no one dares work with our company. Our goods are just piling up in warehouses. If this continues, we'll run out of funds. You know our financial chain has always been unstable. We've only lasted this long thanks to you." Martin slammed his fist onto the desk. His face was like ice. After a long silence, he finally spoke, voice low and ominous. "We'll kill Oliver." Zoe, sitting nearby, had heard the entire conversation. Startled, she asked worriedly, But he's so alert now, it won't be easy to touch him. Martin glanced at her scarred face, a flicker of disgust in his eyes. He said coldly, "He's desperate to find Valentina, right? We just need to use his weakness. Then we'll have our chance." Zoe's eyes lit up, excitement flashing across her ruined face. "You mean, we lure him out using Valentina?" Martin smirked. "Smart." Meanwhile, in another world, the baby's wounds had healed quickly. 1 month later, the doctor informed Valentina, "You can bring your baby home now." After Romeo's wounds had scabbed over, he stopped crying so much. He was like a tiny glutinous rice ball, soft, adorable, and always eager to interact with Valentina. Valentina never idled either. Once the baby fell asleep, she would go online to learn parenting techniques. Her baby didn't have a father growing up, so she wanted to double the love and become the best mom she could be. Just as she finished an online class and was about to return to the room to check on Romeo, the mechanical voice of the system suddenly rang out. "Host. Gossip time. Time to shift gears and stretch that brain of yours." Valentina stood up while walking toward the room. Recently, the system had become way too active. "Go on. After Oliver regained his memory, he got revenge for you and the baby. He's vicious as hell. After making Zoe suffer physically, he got a tattoo artist to ink a few disgustingly sentimental words on her chest." Valentina raised an eyebrow. Curiosity piqued. "What words?" The system was clearly thrilled, as if it were sipping popcorn mid-gossip. He had her tattooed with "Oliver loves Valentina. Zoe already can't stand you. And now it's like stabbing her in the heart with a knife. That man's cruelty is next level. Mental and physical torment." He went all in. As if sensing Valentina's amusement, Romeo suddenly burst into a wide grin. Valentina turned to look at the crib beside her. Her delicate features softened with maternal love. "What's got you so happy, little one?" Meanwhile, in Sue Corporation's president's office, the assistant hesitated for a moment before knocking on the door and stepping in. "President Sue, we have a lead. Someone claims to have seen Madam near an abandoned villa and even sketched her portrait." Oliver paused mid-signature and stood up instantly. "Let's go now." The assistant frowned, worried. "President Sue, what if it's another scam for reward money? Should I verify it first?" "No, we go now." Oliver's voice was low and firm. Even if there was just a sliver of hope, he couldn't risk missing it. An hour later, the Bentley stopped in front of the abandoned villa. Oliver rushed inside. The first floor was covered in dust. 3 paintings hung on the wall. One was of Valentina. The other 2 were of a baby. In the lower right corner of one baby portrait, a small signature read, "Valentina." The assistant gasped in shock. "That's Madam's handwriting." Oliver stared at the signature, and his eyes turned red. "Valentina, she's alive." He looked at his assistant, and for the first time, there was a rare, fragile look on his face. "Where's the informant?" "Here," a tender voice answered. Oliver and the assistant turned their heads. It was a girl, 15 or 16 years old. She wore a white t-shirt, faded jeans, and canvas shoes stained with damp mud. Oliver stepped closer, voice urgent. "Where did you see my wife?" The girl pointed to the painting on the wall. "You mean this pretty lady?" Oliver nodded. His voice carried a trace of longing. "Yes, she's my wife." The girl tilted her head slightly, as if trying to recall, her expression sincere. "She's been coming by every now and then to paint, always painting a baby." "She painted all these?" Oliver's eyes lit up. The girl nodded, then pointed toward the staircase. "She usually paints upstairs." The girl explained. "She should still be there, it's probably the first room." Without another word, Oliver hurried upstairs. His assistant quickly followed. Standing outside the room, Oliver paused and took a deep breath, then slowly pushed the door open. The small room contained only an easel and a wooden chair. A woman who looked strikingly similar to Valentina sat there, painting a portrait of Romeo. Oliver felt his mind go blank. He stepped forward, overwhelmed, and whispered, "Valentina." The woman's hand paused mid-stroke. She slowly turned toward him, as if reaching out to grab his hand, but just before her hand touched him, Oliver instinctively stepped back. His voice turned cold. You really thought I'd fall for the same trick twice? The woman froze, eyes widening in surprise. Only then did Oliver clearly see her face. She looked to be in her 30s. Fine lines etched the corners of her eyes, her features revealing a shrewd and weary air. The resemblance to Valentina was barely there. Seeing the plan unravel, the witch didn't bother pretending anymore. When did you figure it out? She asked, her voice low. Oliver's lips curved coldly. Valentina has a habit. When she signs official documents, the final vertical stroke is straight, but in casual signatures, she always slants it to the left. The assistant, still standing at the door, finally caught on. So they must have forged her signature, probably from the divorce paper Oliver posted on Instagram? The witch blinked in surprise, then gave a resigned sigh. As expected of President Sue, I underestimated you. Oliver's gaze darkened as he pulled out his phone and typed a message. Moments later, a group of bodyguards stormed in. The lead one brought out rope and swiftly tied the witch up. In the villa's grand living room, the witch was now tied to a wooden chair. The teenage girl had been knocked unconscious and lay sprawled on the floor. Oliver sat elegantly on the sofa, staring down coldly at the woman before him. The witch narrowed her eyes. You came prepared. Oliver crossed his legs and replied icily. Valentina is indeed my weakness. But I'm not stupid enough to walk into a trap alone. He paused, then narrowed his eyes. A year ago, was it you who cursed me? The witch's heart skipped a beat. She closed her eyes. A few seconds later, she reopened them. At this point, preserving her life was more important than denial. She confessed everything. Yes, Zoe and Martin came to me and asked me to curse you. 2 years ago. She had still been a white witch, she only practiced healing magic. Never curses. But she had a son and a daughter. Her daughter was 15. Her son, only 7. Then one day, her son was diagnosed with cancer. Her savings disappeared in an instant, and desperation consumed her. That's when Zoe and Martin approached her. They promised 2 million yuan, plus all future treatment expenses for her child, if she cursed Oliver. Desperate, she agreed. She flew to the western provinces that very night, and cursed him. The curse caused Oliver's memory loss. The assistant, listening from the side, frowned. Aren't curses supposed to have backlash? The witch glanced at him and replied softly. Yes, all things have a price, but my life is already ruined. I stopped caring about consequences a long time ago. As for Zoe, she continued. I warned her, this kind of curse can only last up to 2 years. After that, she'll suffer the backlash. As for why Zoe had already started coughing up blood, the witch genuinely had no idea. The assistant murmured. So 2 years later, President Sue would have slowly regained his memory. The witch nodded. The assistant frowned slightly, then looked toward the long-silent President Sue. He asked curiously, didn't Zoe and Martin ever worry that you'd regain your memory in 2 years? The witch lowered her gaze and answered truthfully, they never intended for you to live that long. The curse I cast was designed to make you mistake your lover for Zoe. They had calculated everything with your personality and habits. You're always generous to women. Once Zoe got the car, house, and your money, they planned to use me to finish the job and kill you. The entire living room went completely silent. After a long pause, Oliver slowly looked up. For the first time, he spoke, voice low and grave. Martin's finances were already falling apart, weren't they? The witch's eyes widened in shock. She looked at him, visibly surprised. So sharp, so quick. No wonder Martin could never beat Oliver, not before, and definitely not now. Though she hadn't said a word, Oliver could already tell by her reaction. He was right. From the moment Zoe and Martin publicly divorced, they had been staging a grand act, playing a drama for the world to see. Zoe loved Martin too deeply, enough to become his puppet willingly. Oliver slowly rubbed the prayer beads around his wrist. His voice was casual, but what he said sent chills down everyone's spine. You should know my way of doing things. I always repay what's owed, tenfold. The meaning was clear. He would deal with her now. The witch lowered her head, silently accepting it. She had already expected this outcome the moment she agreed to curse him. Just as she opened her mouth to speak, Oliver cut her off. What about today? What was their plan this time? The witch confessed everything. 3 days ago, Zoe and Martin approached me. They planned to lure you with a Valentina sighting and get me to curse you again, this time, to turn you into a vegetable. I originally refused. I didn't want to get involved again, but Martin threatened my children's safety. I had no choice. She paused, then added earnestly, what I did to you last year was wrong. I accept any punishment, but if I can atone, let me try. Oliver paused, the movement of his fingers on the prayer beads slowing. Seeing he hadn't interrupted her, the witch continued, I'm proficient in 2 types of curses. One makes 2 people who love each other start to hate, until they destroy each other. The other is one-sided. It makes one person obsessed with destroying another, until the victim dies. Oliver didn't hesitate. The second one, didn't Zoe claim she loved Martin? So much that she'd do anything for him? Then let her taste what Valentina had gone through, what it felt like to be destroyed by the person you love. As for Martin, Oliver had plenty of time to return the favor. Then, President Sue, I'll need your cooperation. Oliver glanced at the unconscious girl lying nearby, brows slightly furrowed. The witch followed his gaze and said gently, Don't worry, President Sue, that's my daughter. Once she wakes up, I'll make sure she stays quiet. Oliver nodded, then turned to his assistant and motioned for him to untie the witch. Once freed, she walked over to the girl and gently shook her awake. After whispering to her for a moment, the girl nodded obediently. Okay, Mama, I understand. Meanwhile, in a villa in L City, Martin paced anxiously in the living room, glancing repeatedly at the clock on the wall. Why hasn't the witch called yet? Damn it! Had something gone wrong? Zoe sat on the sofa. Deep cuts still marred her face, terrifying to look at. She frowned slightly. Should we just give her a call? No. Martin Chan's eyes flashed with irritation. She's definitely with Oliver right now. If we call her, we might blow the whole plan. Just then, his phone suddenly rang. Seeing the caller ID, Martin's eyes lit up. He answered eagerly. How did it go? It's done. Oliver's been taken to the hospital. Martin breathed a sigh of relief and smiled in satisfaction. You helped us a lot. We'll cover your son's treatment all the way. Thank you, the witch replied, her tone suddenly turning icy. One more thing I wanted to discuss. Right before I cursed Oliver, he mentioned Sue suddenly coughing up blood. If it's convenient, I'd like to talk to you in person. The mention of Zoe's sudden bleeding still puzzled Martin. He nodded instantly. All right, I'll send someone to pick you up. An hour later, a black car rolled slowly into the villa's driveway. As soon as the witch walked in, Martin couldn't hold back his urgency. What caused Zoe's sudden bleeding? Was it Oliver's doing? Zoe also stood up, her face still scarred, watching the witch suspiciously. The witch calmly took out her phone. After I cursed Oliver, I found something on him. Take a look. She handed the phone to Martin, and at that moment, a tiny curse bug slipped silently from her sleeve and crawled into Martin's wrist. The bug moved swiftly. In mere seconds, it burrowed up Martin's arm and straight into his mouth. Martin convulsed and passed out immediately. Zoe gasped in shock. What are you doing? The witch turned slowly, her expression ice cold. She raised her hand and knocked Zoe out with one strike. Then, without delay, she called Oliver. It's done, but I'll need your cooperation for the next part of the act. Got it, came Oliver's calm reply. 3 days later, news exploded across L City. President Oliver Sue had fallen into a coma and become a vegetable. Meanwhile, in the other world, Valentina was at a pet shop, looking at kittens. After consulting a child development expert and reflecting on her own situation, she decided to adopt a cat to keep the baby company. This was her first time raising a pet. So she did lots of research, but still couldn't make up her mind. The shop owner, understanding her needs and preferences, offered a kind suggestion. Miss Li, why not get a Maine Coon? You like big, gentle cats, right? Maine Coons are large in size, look fierce at first glance, but they're actually very docile. After an entire afternoon of indecision, Valentina finally agreed. She chose a fluffy gray Maine Coon. When she brought the cat home, Baby Romeo's chubby hands started waving excitedly. The kitten was intelligent. It curled up inside the bed Valentina prepared. But its eyes never left Romeo. Valentina was about to take out her phone to snap a photo when the system's mechanical voice rang out. "Host, your ex-husband's combat power is off the charts." Once he regained his memory, none of them could stop him. Valentina raised an eyebrow as she took a photo of Romeo and the kitten. "Ex-husband? Where are you learning this internet slang from? What did he do now?" The system's tones sounded almost thrilled. It recounted everything that had happened in Oliver's world lately. Then added, "Oliver's been destroying Martin's company. Martin can't take the pressure anymore. He's about to declare bankruptcy." Valentina's eyes turned slightly cold. She smiled. He should have given up long ago. Maybe Romeo could sense Valentina's joy, because he waved his chubby arms and legs again, giggling with delight. Meanwhile, in Oliver's world, 5 days later, a shocking headline swept through all of El City. Shocking! Oliver's first love beaten to death by her ex-husband. As it turned out, the curse bug inside Martin Chan had grown rapidly. His hatred toward Zoe intensified until he finally lost control. In a fit of madness, he tortured Zoe to death. While reporting the incident to Oliver, the assistant added, according to their housekeeper, before Zoe died, she was crying and begging Martin to wake up, saying he used to love her. Oliver's dark eyes lowered. He gazed at the night outside the window and said coldly, "Hire a lawyer. I want Martin to spend the rest of his life in prison." Understood. President Sue. A month later, news came that the witch had committed suicide. Oliver remained calm. He'd long expected it. Her 7-year-old son had passed away from terminal cancer the week before, leaving behind a daughter barely 16. Oliver would have come after her eventually, and Martin certainly wouldn't have spared her either. 2 weeks after that, the rumors of Oliver being in a vegetative state had spread so widely that no one was reporting Valentina sightings anymore. When Oliver once again asked the assistant if anyone had seen Valentina recently, the assistant hesitated, then gently suggested, "President Sue, the death certificate can't be forged. Maybe it's time to let go?" Oliver's hand clenched tightly around his pen. He shook his head, eyes unwavering. "Impossible. Valentina, she can't be dead." The assistant sighed. When he glanced at Oliver's wrist, his pupils suddenly shrank. It was red and swollen. He turned and quietly closed the office door. Back in his own office, the assistant called Dr. Lin. "President Sue's condition is getting worse. Recently, he's been hallucinating. He says he keeps seeing glimpses of Valentina. Even more concerning, I think he's showing signs of self-harm. If this continues, he might not even live long enough to die of his heart disease." There was a moment of silence on the other end. Then Dr. Lin said gravely, "President Sue can't accept her death. He's falling into depression. At this rate, I fear something worse." The assistant's heart skipped a beat. "Worse? What do you mean?" Dr. Lin spoke slowly and seriously. "In my experience, when a genius like him becomes severely depressed, he may begin to develop antisocial personality disorder. Keep a close eye on him. Call me immediately if anything changes." The assistant frowned and muttered to himself, "I think he's already showing signs." After he finished explaining, Dr. Lin warned, "You're the closest person to him right now. Please, try to talk him down whenever you can." The assistant sighed, his tone bitter. "Believe me, I want to, but do you really think I can stop him?" Meanwhile, in the other world, Valentina had grown accustomed to her new life. With her bank balance more than comfortable, she hired a nanny to free up her hands. Now with some spare time, she had taken up flower arranging. She had just trimmed a bouquet when the system's mechanical voice chirped in. "Wow, your ex-hubby has officially lost his mind." Valentina paused, scissors still in hand. She frowned slightly. Where did the system even learn such slang? Still, lost his mind? That didn't sound like something you'd associate with Oliver. What did he do this time? The system paused for a moment, then let out a dramatic wail. "Oliver's probably slowly coming to terms with your death in that world. He's fallen into depression and is now showing signs of antisocial behavior. If this continues, even I won't be able to hold it together anymore." Valentina frowned slightly. not fully understanding. What does that have to do with you? Host, don't you get it? If he keeps this up, he's going to crash my entire mission world. The system's voice was on the verge of breakdown. Then it suddenly paused. Then shrieked, "Ah, he's completely lost it. He's going to blow up an island now. I'm going to check on him." Blow up an island? Valentina's delicate features froze in surprise. He's really going to blow up an island? System? She called out several times. No response. Meanwhile, in Oliver's world, his assistant paced frantically behind him, watching Oliver spend a fortune to buy an island, and now he was preparing to purchase explosives to blow it up. President Sue, maybe we should think this through? Oliver, seated behind his desk, didn't even look up as he signed off on another document. It's an uninhabited island. No one's getting hurt. The assistant was speechless. Sir, can't you find a less terrifying way to vent your emotions? Seeing that he couldn't talk him out of it, he quickly called Dr. Lin. Dr. Lin was silent for a long time before sighing. Should I come by and give him a sedative? Maybe it'll calm him down. The assistant shook his head. With Sue's skills, you think the two of us could even get close? Fair. 30 minutes later, Oliver checked his phone, then stood and looked at his assistant. The explosives are ready. They're loading them now. Let's go. The man moved swiftly. The assistant followed, helpless. An hour later, Oliver stood on the shoreline, commanding a team of bodyguards to plant explosives on the uninhabited island. From the boat, the lead bodyguard returned and handed him the detonator. Everything's ready. President Sue. Oliver narrowed his eyes. Despite the assistant's frantic protests, he raised his thumb, just about to press the button, when suddenly, a mechanical voice rang out. Wait! Don't press it! Oliver's hand froze. His brows furrowed. He looked left and right, except for his assistant and the guards. No one was around. He asked coldly, "Who said that?" The assistant's face turned pale. He's hearing voices now? Oh no, it's worse than we thought. You don't have to speak. Just think it. I can hear you. I'm the system. Don't press the button. Valentina is alive. Oliver's pupils dilated. For a moment, his heart stopped. Even his lowered hand began to tremble. What did you say? Valentina isn't dead? The system sighed, resigned. To save its mission world from collapsing, it had no choice but to tell him the truth. She's not dead. She's alive and doing well. Oliver's tall frame trembled. His assistant helped him sit down. Where is she? I'll go now. I just want to see her. Just once. Please, tell me where she is. I can't tell you. She doesn't want to see you. She doesn't want to see me? Correct. Oliver sat in silence on a bench by the sea. The cold wind whipped through his clothes, sending a chill into his bones. His black eyes turned red with sorrow. It took a long time before Oliver finally hunched over and dragged himself back to the car, just when the system thought Oliver would finally calm down for a while. 3 days later, he came up with an even more outrageous idea, filling the sea with gold bars to build a skyscraper. He prepared tens of thousands of grams of pure gold, mixed it with sand, and planned to build a towering structure named Valentina. The moment this plan got out, crowds gathered near the shoreline, hoping to snatch some gold during construction. Chaos broke out. Even the special police were dispatched. The system was so shocked. It popped back in. Dear ancestor, could you please chill for just a moment? If you want to build a building, go ahead. But who fills the sea with solid gold? Oliver frowned, completely unbothered. I'll die soon without my wife. This money is meaningless. All right. Fine. I'll tell you something, but stop filling the sea with gold. What is it? Valentina's alive. You're a child too. Oliver's head jerked up. His eyes instantly reddened. The baby is alive? Yes. That entire night, Oliver was so happy he couldn't sleep. He handed out 10,000 yen bonuses to every employee in the Sue group, but he only managed to stay calm for about 2 weeks. Then came his third wave of chaos. He started a revenge team to rob the rich to help the poor. He spent a fortune assembling a squad, planning to assassinate corrupt, abusive tycoons. He even made a list of over 100 names. The system couldn't take it anymore. Please, you can't go on a killing spree. If you actually gun down all these people, I'll be wiped out too. Oliver sat behind his desk, black eyes lowered, full of longing. I want to see Valentina. When I can't see her, my mind spirals. I need to do something to distract myself. The system finally gave in, exhausted. Fine, I'll take you to her, but you can only stay 5 days, and you must promise not to cause trouble. I promise. 30 minutes later, in another world, Valentina was pushing Romeo's stroller through a quiet neighborhood park. A fluffy gray Maine Coon padded along beside her. The afternoon sunlight bathed her in warmth, casting a soft golden glow on her flowing white dress. From a distance, Oliver watched her, his eyes red with emotion, his heart overflowing with love and guilt. She was alive. The baby was alive. Without him, she had carried on, raising their child alone. She must have suffered so much. She didn't deserve any of it. All afternoon, Oliver silently followed her. She went to the supermarket, he followed. She strolled through the mall, he followed. Even when she stopped for milk tea, he quietly waited nearby. The system was confused. Why don't you go up to her? Oliver sat on a bench, letting out a bitter laugh. She doesn't want to see me. And honestly, I don't have the right to face her. Those 10 months, the months he forgot her, what must they have been like for her? And the things he said, the things he did, he deserved every ounce of regret. Inside the milk tea shop, Valentina looked around warily. She couldn't shake the feeling. Someone had been following her all afternoon. Oddly enough, every time Valentina turned around, she never saw anyone. For 5 days, Oliver didn't disturb her. He just watched from a distance, quiet, hidden. On the 5th day, the system's mechanical voice returned. Time's up. You need to go back. Oliver took one last photo of Valentina and the baby from afar, and quietly set it as his phone's wallpaper. Okay. That night, Oliver returned to his original world. He didn't sleep a wink. The next morning, he began secretly stockpiling weapons. He had made up his mind. In 1 week, he would destroy the world. His assistant watched Oliver sketch out the destruction plan, his heart thudding with dread. Sue, maybe we should think this over again. Don't try to stop me. I'm ending this world. Oliver already understood the pattern. Every time he attempted revenge, the system would intervene. So he figured if he tried to destroy the world, the system would definitely come. And he was right. 3 days later, as the weapons arrived and his men began preparations, the system finally panicked. Dear God, please, don't blow up the world. Oliver halted the orders, then said, I want to return to that world. I want to stay there, forever. The system hesitated. It had finally been driven to its limit by this lunatic. Fine, but if you want to go, you have to die here. I'm fine with that. Let me finish. Once you cross over, I'll give you a new identity. You'll no longer have heart disease. But you'll also lose everything you had here, your money, your power, your reputation. You'll start from zero. Oliver didn't hesitate. I accept. All right, you have 3 days to say goodbye. 3 days from now, your death will be recorded as sudden heart failure. Just imagining seeing Valentina and the baby again made his heart beat faster. Thank you. 3 days later, in L City, news of Oliver's sudden death due to heart failure shook the entire city. After leaving that world, Oliver was reborn in Valentina's world. His name and age stayed the same. He spent the first week adapting to this world. He didn't rush to find a job. Instead, with his brilliant mind, he quickly secured investments and started building his own small company. He worked like a madman, determined to create a better life for Valentina and their child. When exhaustion hit, he would look at his phone's wallpaper, a photo of her and Romeo. When the longing grew too painful, every evening at 6:30, he would go to the park Valentina often visited, just to watch her from afar. Within a year, Oliver's new Sue Corporation became the rising star of Y City. All major media outlets wanted a piece of him, but none had ever captured his full face. The only leaked photo was one of him sitting in a car, looking down at his phone wallpaper, wearing a mask and sunglasses. The internet buzzed with curiosity. Maybe he's actually super ugly? No way. They say he's like 6 feet 2 inches. Tall guys are rarely ugly. I need to see what CEO Sue looks like. Meanwhile, Valentina was scrolling through Instagram from bed. Suddenly, a photo caught her eye. Her fingers froze. Her pupils shrank. That man was Oliver. Impossible. Panic surged through her. She called out to the system. System! But it never answered. The system was completely silent. Valentina's face went pale. She immediately made up her mind. She had to move. Far away. As far from Oliver as possible. For several days, Valentina had been busy looking at new houses. On Sunday, at exactly 6:25 p.m., Oliver Sue waited in the park, calculating the time Valentina usually arrived for her evening walk with the baby. But 20 minutes passed, and she didn't show up. A strange feeling grew in his chest. Something was wrong. He followed the route Valentina usually took from the residential area to the park. Not long after, just outside the park gates, he saw her, surrounded by 3 burly men. Valentina's eyes were red as she clutched the baby tightly. Terrified, her whole body trembled, and her voice shook. How much do you want? I'll give you everything, just don't hurt my baby. The man in front stood at nearly 9 meters tall, all muscle, with a long scar over his shoulder. He sneered, his face full of menace. We've been watching you for months. You're always alone, probably some rich guy's mistress. Want to live? Give us 50 million. Sleep with us for one night. We'll let you go. Valentina's face turned pale, her voice full of desperation. Okay, I'll give you the money. Just, please don't hurt my baby. Can I just give the money? Please don't touch me. The scarred man licked his lips as his greedy gaze locked on her delicate face. He reached toward her. What's the difference? You're just a mistress. What does it matter who you sleep with? Just as his hand was about to touch her face, a chilling voice exploded from behind. Who said you could touch her? A heavy kick landed on the man's thigh. It was Oliver. His face was dark, eyes burning red. Valentina froze in disbelief. He really came. The 3 men turned toward him. The scarred one barked. What are you looking at? Get him! Oliver rolled up his sleeves. Within minutes, he had taken them all down. The scarred man, refusing to give up, pulled a knife and lunged at Oliver. Valentina cried out, "Watch out!" The blade tore through Oliver's shirt, leaving a long bloody gash across his waist. He grunted, pain sharp in his chest, but he retaliated instantly, grabbing the knife, stabbing the man 3 times. On the 4th stab, the man collapsed, barely breathing. Oliver, panting, looked at Valentina, worried. Seeing she was unharmed, he sighed in relief, then quickly checked the baby. Valentina instinctively tightened her grip. Why are you here? This is my child. I'm not here to take the baby. I don't deserve that. Oliver's voice was low, filled with guilt. I forced the system to let me come back. Valentina took a step back. The moment he mentioned the system, the memories came flooding in. Her voice went cold. Go to the hospital. Get your wound treated. Stop bothering me. I'm moving soon. Oliver saw the rejection in her eyes. He smiled bitterly, voice hoarse. Don't move away. Valentina, I know I hurt you. I know it's hard. I just want to make it right. I promise. I won't get close. Just let me watch from a distance. But his humble words didn't soften her. Valentina's voice turned sharper, colder. Oliver, stop saying you understand how I feel. There's no such thing as true empathy in this world. Yes, she knew he hadn't hurt her on purpose, but the things he said, the way he treated her, those wounds stayed, etched into her memory. Oliver saw how guarded she still was. His heart ached. After one final, reluctant glance at her and the baby, he turned and walked away. 4 days after, Valentina never saw him again. She had thought that Oliver's efforts were just a fleeting whim, or that perhaps he'd given up when things became difficult. But just then, the system, which had been avoiding her, suddenly popped up again. System, he's gone insane. That guy got himself hospitalized. Valentina paused while feeding baby food to Romeo. Her long lashes lowered slightly, and she didn't speak. She had noticed it lately. The system seemed a little biased toward Oliver. Valentina, did you bring him back here? The system froze, then muttered in exasperation. System, come on. Host. You can't blame me. You don't know how bad it got. Oliver Sue missed you so much. He was on the verge of turning into a full-blown sociopath. If I hadn't brought him here, he would have destroyed the entire world. It paused, then added, System, and ever since you told him there's no such thing as real empathy, he's been trying to relive all the things he made you suffer, by doing them to himself. System, you drank yourself sick once, and he said you were being dramatic. Now, he's been drinking until he vomits blood, until he has alcohol poisoning, to the point of being rushed to the hospital for a stomach pump. System, you went through childbirth and he wasn't there, so he went to experience simulations of childbirth-level pain, again and again, until his body couldn't take it anymore and he fainted. System, and remember when he made you wash Zoe's dress in ice-cold water during your postpartum recovery? He poured buckets of ice water on himself, one after another. System, I tried to stop him, but he kept saying, there is no such thing as empathy, only when you go through it yourself can you understand a sliver of what she felt. Valentina's hand trembled, spoon midair, her eyes lowered, her voice soft. Valentina, I never asked him to do that. He brought it on himself. The system sighed. System, I'll be honest. I respect the man. He took it like a true warrior. Valentina lowered her head and didn't speak again. But the redness in her eyes betrayed the emotions welling up inside her. Another year passed. The Sue Corporation rose rapidly and became a major pillar in Y City. Oliver deposited all of the company's profits into Valentina's bank account. Whenever he saw beautiful jewelry or clothing, he'd buy them and have them delivered to her doorstep. At first, Valentina resisted. She threw all the gifts, necklaces, dresses, into the trash. But Oliver didn't mind. He kept sending them. Over time, Valentina grew used to his persistent efforts. Then one day, she wore a dress and jewelry that he had bought. Just that was enough to keep Oliver smiling for the whole day. Soon, he became even more shameless. He sent her a housekeeper, a driver, a private chef. He even hired a childcare specialist for Romeo. Then came the villa, the luxury car, and more. Oliver's personal assistant couldn't make sense of any of it. He didn't know the full history between Oliver and Valentina. Why would their cold, brilliant CEO go so far for a single mom? Unless that kid was his? The assistant stared at him. Oliver finally looked up from the pile of documents. What is it? The assistant hesitated, then cautiously asked, Sir, what exactly is your relationship with Miss Li? Oliver's gaze softened, his voice gentle. She's my wife. The assistant was stunned. Then, why don't you live together? Oliver's eyes lowered. He didn't hide the truth. I made mistakes. She won't forgive me. All I can do now is stay close and watch over her from afar. The assistant stood there in a daze. So their famously aloof CEO was a complete romantic. 4 more years passed. Romeo had started elementary school. One afternoon, he came home with his little head lowered. His soft pink lips were tightly pressed together, his delicate cheeks full of frustration and sadness. Valentina scooped him into her arms, gently rubbing his head. What's wrong, sweetheart? Why the sad face? Romeo looked up, his large eyes glossy with tears. He pouted with grievance and whimpered. They laughed at me. They said, I don't have a daddy. Valentina looked at Romeo, tears in his big eyes, his little face full of sadness. Her heart ached. She pulled him into a tight hug, eyes red. That's not true. Who said you don't have a dad? You do. And he's amazing, one of the most important people in Y City. Romeo blinked up at her. Really? Mommy? Can I meet him? Seeing that hopeful face, Valentina gave in. Okay, he'll take you to school the day after tomorrow. Yay, Mommy, you're the best. The next day, at Sue Corporation, inside the CEO's office, Oliver looked at Valentina across the desk. After she finished talking, he lowered his eyes. Valentina, I'll take Romeo to school, but I have one request. What is it? Oliver took out a small box and opened it. Inside was a shining diamond ring. Let's start again. Will you be with me? Valentina looked at him, quiet. 6 years had passed. She had seen what he had done for her from afar. Maybe it was time to stop running. Okay. Oliver's hands shook. He hugged her tightly. After a long moment, he gently put the ring on her finger. Then, looking into her eyes, he kissed her softly. Thank you, Valentina. From now on, I'll love you for the rest of my life.